Hello, everyone. So this is going to be a little bit of it's almost going to be a game review. It's going to be similar to my other videos where it's kind of largely unscripted and off the cuff. Just because I feel in a lot of respects, especially when it comes to my opinions, um, this is an easier way for me to kind of express how I feel. But yeah, this will be kind of my take on my first impressions of Starfield. So I streamed it last night. It was a lot of fun. I played it for about 8 hours in the end, which is excessive, but there you go. And yeah, I've got some thoughts on the game. What do I think of Starfield? If I had to, kind of sum it up in one phrase, it's exactly what I thought it would be, which means that I'm not disappointed. I went into this expecting it was basically going to be Skyrim. It was basically going to be Skyrim with guns in space, and that's pretty much exactly what it is. So I'm happy. That's what I want. So far, it seems like a solid 7 out of 10. Some gamers are throwing that around as a bad thing. I personally don't think so. And yeah, I'll try and break down things a little bit. So I've not made much progress in the main story, and personally, I think the main story is the introduction to the main story is one of the weakest aspects of the game. Bethesda, bless them, can't help but to make you the chosen one in the first 10 minutes of the game. You are a space miner and you uncover some kind of weird rock. You touch it and then you get Mass Effect visions. And suddenly now you're hot shit and everyone wants you. So whatever. Again, it's the Skyrim opening. It's the Oblivion opening. It's basically... You need to kind of establish the player character as special in some way. We're not playing Morrowind. We're not playing Fallout New Vegas, where you open the game as just some shit-eating nobody. No. Yeah, we have to get the fact that the player is like a super special OC out of the way. Of course, as I found out last night, you do, after a certain point at least, you do have the option to ignore that, and you can, in fact, just go out and pursue your own goals, which is actually where I think the majority of the fun of the game is. Personally, I think the game looks really good. I know there's people out there saying that the graphics are bad for whatever reason. I suggest you go out and touch grass. I don't know what to tell you. They look fine. I mean, sometimes if you get up really close to like the ground's texture, it looks a little muddy, and it's like, well, okay. I really like the art design. I mean, this kind of like NASA aesthetic that Starfield has going on is right up my alley. So I'll be a little biased in that regard. If I had to kind of sum it up, it's basically Skyrim mixed with No Man's Sky, but specifically No Man's Sky after Hello Games had fixed it up for a while. So good No Man's Sky, not launch No Man's Sky. In terms as to how it plays, I am a little disappointed about the space travel. It is done entirely via menus. You basically have no reason to actually pilot your ship outside of dogfights, which, unless you go looking for them, are incredibly rare from what I can tell. Traveling is done entirely via menus. It's not like Elite Dangerous, where you can seamlessly transition from space to planet or from system to system. That's a little disappointing. That being said, space combat seems fine. Like I said, I really did, I played for about 8 hours last night. I think I engaged in it once, and that was in the tutorial. So when I play more tonight, I think I might try and seek out some space combat. A lot of the guns feel pretty nice to use. Melee is okay. I mean, it's the creation engine. It's gonna feel all right. The main issue with some of the enemies in the game is they get absurdly tanky. Like, absurdly tanky. Like, you can just be sat there, just like unloading a machine gun into someone's face, and sometimes they won't even stagger. They'll just stand there and take it. I've noticed while exploring that the level distributions of some of the enemies is incredibly all over the place. So, for example, on the planet that you can see behind me, the levels of the enemies I was fighting would range from 1 to level 38. And as you can see here, I just hit level 10. So I have no idea as to how the game works out its difficulty and its enemy scaling. there isn't any kind of easy way to figure out at first glance whether or not a planet is too high level for you. I don't even know if that is a thing or whether or not it goes off level lists. That being said, the fact that enemy difficulty can vary quite a lot actually does add some challenge to the combat, and it made me kind of engage more with the game systems than I would normally in, say, something like Fallout. It is especially worth your time to save and reload a lot. That is something that you will probably wind up doing, at least if you play like I do. So there seems to be a decent breadth of material that you can do elsewhere. Plenty of side quests. I found what happened quite a lot is if I just went off the beaten track and just spoke with random NPCs, this would often lead to some kind of quest. Some of them were radiant, some of them are scripted. It kind of really depends. You can kind of tell which one's a radiant quest because they speak about it in very, very general terms. So you'll find a space colonist and they'll just be all like, "Hey there, space adventurer. We had a big argument at Space Colony and one of us ran off. You need to go find them." And it's like, okay, well, they don't mention anyone by name. They don't mention the planet they're on. You can tell that's a radiant quest. But other times, you get you get some more interesting quests. The writing's fine. Some people are kind of like weirdo cartoon characters. And it kind of runs into the same world building issue that Skyrim does, which is that space pirates massively outpopulate everyone else. Space pirates and mercenaries. And it's like, oh wow, there's a mine here. Oh yeah, of course it's full of space mercenaries. Yeah, why wouldn't it be? I guess it's a little more understandable in Starfield as opposed to say Skyrim, because obviously the scale of the setting that we're dealing with is a lot bigger. But yeah, I'm level 10 and I've already killed the population of a small town just entirely of space mercenaries and space pirates that just decided they didn't want to live by attacking me. Persuasion has been overhauled. So now Persuasion is a minigame, although not the minigame from Oblivion. In Persuasion in Starfield, you have to pick different dialogue options with the hopes that the person will listen to what it is you're saying. The tutorial for this system is remarkably poor, and I'll speak a little bit more about that later. So I'm not entirely sure whether or not picking just the right option is enough. There seems to be some kind of dice rolling involved. But I have noticed that as a whole, if you're sensible, Persuasion is quite powerful, even if you don't invest any skill points into it. To the point where part of me is wondering, do you even need to invest skill points into it? The environmental design, I think, is absolutely phenomenal in this game. I think it's the best aspect of it. Planets look good. Environments look good. Lighting looks good. It all looks good. I like the design of the buildings in the game. And I spent a considerable amount of time, my playtime last night, just running around and looking at things. I was genuinely excited to see what, the clutter in the rooms. I wanted to see the living arrangements. I just wanted to look at stuff, which is not something that's happened to me in a game in a very long time. There is a lot of junk. There is a lot of clutter. If you have a kleptomaniac streak in this game, that can scratch that to a certain degree. NPC AI is just the right level of primitive. It's basically Skyrim AI. If you want to steal something from an NPC, they'll get mad if you pick it up, but they won't get mad if you pick up, say, a dinner tray, and then use that to knock the object onto the ground and out of their sight where they can't see you steal it. So we're dealing with that level of AI again, which is exactly what some people want. And there's nothing quite like sneaking up on an NPC, shooting them in the head, and then they slowly stand up and say, "Hey, stop that." That's we're back, baby. Gaming's back. I'm not going to say it's a perfect game, though. There are some things I'm not so much of a fan of. The music at times is a little too background. The sound in general isn't great sometimes. I mean, some of the guns sound quite nice to listen to when you fire them. The music is a little too generic for my taste. I get that you're going to be hearing it a lot, but there were times where it was so generic and so background, I didn't even mentally register that it was playing. Which, okay, yeah, you don't want background music to be overwhelming, but at the same time, you want the audience to at least realize that it's playing. It's a little too generic for my taste. The voice acting is fine. I've not heard any noticeably bad performances yet. Everyone's doing a decent job. The probably one of the most off-putting things about a lot of NPCs in the game is the facial animations. I'm going to be a little more critical of this because I've also been playing Baldur's Gate 3 now that I have a computer again. And obviously the facial animations in Baldur's Gate 3 are absolutely phenomenal. So, you know, I don't want to be unfair to, you know, not everyone can be Baldur's Gate 3, but when you look at the faces that some NPCs pull during conversations, it looks automatically generated to me. And to the point where sometimes I don't know if anyone checked them. Because you get some really uncanny valley NPCs when they talk to you. It seems to depend partly on the NPC's facial proportions. But for example, occasionally you'll find an NPC where when they talk, their mouth opens just a little bit too wide. Their eyes move in just a little bit of a strange way. NPCs are more expressive in this than they are in previous games, but sometimes people look so alien when they talk to you that actually looks worse than like the dead fisheye look that like Fallout NPCs give you. Yeah, it's a little off-putting at times when you talk to someone and then they look like they're an alien trying to crawl out of someone's skin. It's they look like that they look like that cockroach guy from Men in Black sometimes, which is not what you want. I don't think I found any alien infiltrators in the game yet. It's just people act very strangely at times. In regards to the technical issues in the game, I am running on a new machine, which is above specs, above recommended specifications. If you're running an older machine, especially if you don't have a good SSD, you will run into issues with this game, from what I've been told. Friends of mine who are running less powerful machines are struggling to run Starfield, which is unfortunate. I'm a big proponent of optimization in games, and it's disappointing that much like Jedi Survivor, no, not Jedi, what was the new one? Anyway, much like that, unless you have kind of the latest and greatest hardware, you're going to struggle to run the game. The other nitpick that I have is I'm not a huge fan of the UI. The UI is very cumbersome at times. It's clearly made with a controller in mind at sometimes. But some of the hotkeys you hit aren't exactly intuitive. Sometimes zooming in and out on the system map is a little too sensitive, and you zoom in on things you don't want to, and then you have to zoom out, and it's a whole process. And the fact that you need to enter a menu every time you want to go back to orbit and then go back in, it's cumbersome. Some of the noises the menus make aren't very pleasant. I've heard some people say that it triggers their tinnitus. I personally haven't experienced that myself. Tinnitus. Anyway. Yeah, I think genuinely the UI, I think, at best is serviceable and at worst is poor. Not the worst UI I've ever seen, but I'm not really a fan of it. The only other issue that I have with the game is the tutorialization is incredibly poor as well. There is a significant amount of the game that is simply just not explained to you. And I don't mean in a kind of like games journalist, like how do I basically play the game kind of way. It took me looking at a Discord message to know that you could manually change the lockpicking configurations while you're lockpicking. It took someone in my stream chat to tell me that you could focus the mining laser when you're mining resources. It took someone in my chat to tell me that you can actually fast travel straight to a settlement in the system view without having to manually fly to the planet first. It's little things like that just are not explained. And some of these are huge gameplay quality of life changes. Yeah, whoever did the tutorialization of this game, I think really dropped the ball. That being said, you know, if you're a space nerd, if you just love the idea of being a space adventurer and having your own spaceship to fly around in, there you go. Like, it's exactly what you want. I was genuinely at my most excited last night when I finally got a spaceship of my own, rather than using the one that the game gives you for free, which is actually what you can kind of see behind me here. The stats aren't good, but it's mine, you know? The other big mechanic that I left off is there is No Man's Sky style planet surveying and outpost building. Now, I've not messed with the outpost building yet. Surveying is basically just like scanning things in No Man's Sky. You run around, you look for planetary features, you look for creatures, you look for certain plants, and you look for resources, and you scan them. And this can have the potential to be an exercise in complete frustration. I spent a considerable amount of time last night trying to I'd scanned everything on this planet. I'd scanned all of the plants, I'd scanned all of the resources. Oh, and by the way, you have to scan like different individuals of a certain species like 10 times. It's like 9 or 10 times in order to get them to actually count as scanned, which is just a level of pointless busy work that I'm personally not a fan of. But there was one creature I just couldn't find, and I think I spent like an hour or two looking for it. And it eventually got to the point where I had to Google it. I had to go to a Reddit post, and someone said, oh yeah, if there's an ocean on the planet, it's probably a fish. I'm like, oh. And then you have to land on a coast, and the game is very finicky as to what counts as a coast or not. You have to click around on the planetary map until the biome shows the word coast. And then you have to hike all the way to the ocean and then scan the fish. And apparently there's also birds as well, so good fucking luck if you have to scan a bird. I've never even seen one in the game. Considering how close you have to be unless you upgrade your survey scanner, I could see that being a royal fucking pain. But yeah, that aside, it's just, I mean, in terms of kind of the stuff I'm not a fan of in the game, a lot of it is just, it's relatively, it's little annoyances. It's little things that have been done better elsewhere, or it's limitations of the technology and the way they've designed the game, the fact they've made such a huge barrier to entry, and also the fact that a lot of the NPCs in the game are malformed monster people who don't know how to act like humans. And also, I personally found the opening hook to the main story to be tear-inducingly boring. I could not give less of a shit about the main story at the moment, and I will have a bunch more space adventures before I even consider picking up the main story again. Because I do not care about your we have Mass Effect at home story, or the fact that I'm the space chosen. It is so fucking boring to me. I could not give less of a shit. And ironically, Bethesda wanting to start the stakes as high as they are completely killed any flow or impetus to the story for me. I am at the moment, I'm a nobody space trucker, and everyone's making out that I'm this like amazing super dude from space. And it's like, oh, you need a progression, you know? Like, I don't want to bring it up again, but you think about Morrowind. You start off as just like a prisoner on a prison boat who just gets dumped in the middle of a foreign country, and like they're just like, hey, figure it out. But, Fallout New Vegas, you're a mailman who got shot in the head, and again, like kind of your importance in the story for the most part is kind of earned by you. I mean, yeah, okay, you were carrying like the platinum chip, but you were just a glorified you're a courier. The focus was never on you, it was on the object that you carry, and you don't even have it at the start of the game. So yeah, no, I think that I think they wanted to play it safe. They wanted players to be invested in the story, which is why they, it's like in Skyrim when you get announced to be the Dragonborn in like the first hour of the game, if you follow the story. Ironically, raising the stakes that high that quickly is the most boring choice you can make. So that's disappointing as well. Who knows? I mean, maybe if I get further into it, my opinion on the story will change. As it stands, I could not give less of a fuck about Constellation, or the people in Constellation, or their nice little product placement watch that they want to show off. So, whatever. I'll be having more space adventures. I'll be having fun. 7 out of 10 is Skyrim with guns. Thank you very much. I'll see you on the next one.
I found the aliens. They've taken my hostages.